Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode. So, today we have a guest on our show, and this is Lewis Bertus. Well, okay, tell me if this is right. Do you consider yourself a diabetes educator?
That is included in what I do for
It's part of
sure.
what you do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I would more call it diabetes reversal coach.
Ooh, diabetes
Yeah,
reversal coach. I
yeah.
like it. I like it. We're just going to jump right in because right
Mhm.
off the bat, I want to know more about you and how you got here and a bit about your story. But I just am intrigued by that because so many people think that diabetes isn't reversible.
Yeah,
And so let's just start there for a second.
for sure. I guess we could start probably from the beginning, I guess, on like why I got into it. So by practice, I'm a certified physician assistant. Been working in family medicine for about 6 years. My wife had diabetes, like many of my patients, really bad. Actually had it for 8 years. So even before I became a PA, she had been diagnosed. And so going through PA school, definitely you learn all the dangers of diabetes. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, my wife is going to die. She doesn't get this under
Mm,
control. We are definitely alarmed as to its seriousness. So you go into practice, understanding diabetes, but I think I had a special connection to it because my wife was suffering from this disease. So I was really excited to see, if I could apply what I learned in school to help my wife and obviously future patients. But the thing was, as time went on, her diabetes got worse despite the numerous medications she was on. She was special in the sense that she's the type of patient that like every side effect that's in the back of the bottle she's gonna get. So a lot of times there was
oh,
a lot of
no.
medication adjustments, because she would have the joint pain or the upset stomach, the weight gain, but even when she was on medications, it was so hard to get her sugars under control. So you would then blame it on a diet. Most physicians would say, okay, it's not the medicine not working, it's the diet not working. But I was seeing at home what she was eating, and she was eating the same things that diabetes um, association recommends, physicians recommend their patients, a low carb diet, and her sugar still stayed out of control, which actually gave me even more perspective on my own patients. Because, our patients are always, following our doctor's advice. We would assume if they follow their advice, if they follow our advice, they'll definitely get better. But so if they're not following our advice, they're not going to get better. And most physicians, it's very easy to blame the patient and say, our patients are just not
Mhm.
following our advice. But I could see that that wasn't the case. So for her and possibly many of my patients, they're following our advice. It's just the advice doesn't seem to work for a lot of people. So I guess fast forwarding, um, I decided to really do some research and find out, is this reversible, and does diet really play a role? And within 2 years of researching, I would say about 2 years, a little less than 2 years of really researching and reading articles and books, news journals, research papers, it became clear to me what the problem was. And after I applied that to my wife, within 6 weeks, she was off medicine. And
Wow.
I was like,
6 weeks.
wow, yeah, yeah. Why,
Yeah.
why didn't I learn? It's a simple principles. Why didn't we learn this in medical school? That this is reversible. And so went on to creating Diabetes 180, a diabetes reversal health coaching program.
Wow. Wow, that's such a cool, story. I mean, you really had it was really close to your heart.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering what made you put 2 and 2 together? Like, maybe there's a way for diabetes to be reversed, right?
That's
Because
a
if
good
you're
question.
learning this stuff and it's like, "Okay, well, that's not working," like, what gave you that hit that, "Hey, maybe this is reversible through lifestyle and diet?"
Well, I definitely had another advantage there because I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church,
Oh, okay.
and so as seven, most people are familiar. A lot of people are familiar with Seventh-day Adventist Church and their
Yeah.
health leanings. They have a lot of health leanings. We promote a holistic approach to life,
Mm,
the healing of mind, body, and spirit through nature and holistic methods,
right.
holistic efforts, and healthy lifestyle, healthy living. So I always had an understanding that, food is medicine. And if you applied the right foods to the right diseases or conditions, you can heal and reverse them. And of course, I've read stories and testimonials of other people doing it, including with diabetes. So even while I was learning the medical part, I knew that, okay, well, this is what I'm learning, but I know that there is a dietary approach. Most Seventh-day Adventists
Interesting.
are plant-based, or vegan, or
Yeah.
vegetarian, I should say. And so I had been vegetarian for a while, my wife as well. So we knew there was, a benefit to being plant-based. Um, we just didn't know how to put it together to reverse diabetes until we looked at the science.
Okay, interesting. And there's been a lot of studies, a lot of really good long studies
Yeah,
done with the
yeah,
Seventh-day Adventists because it's a large group of people who all, to an extent in which you can do a really good study, they
starting, yeah,
follow kind of a similar dietary pattern. So and
absolutely.
that's why I know about the Seventh-day Adventists, just because of all of the
Health
studies that
study.
have been done, health studies. Yeah, some
Yeah.
really cool
Mhm.
studies. Is that something that you got into as an adult, or did your parents raise you in that
No,
in
actually,
with
my parents didn't raise me
okay.
vegetarian. So I'm Haitian American, and most, I would say probably a lot of Haitian Americans, even in the Seventh-day Church, they still eat meat.
Okay.
Chicken mainly. We don't eat is unclean, what we call unclean foods. So foods like pork,
Mhm.
shrimps. So those that are considered scavengers. But chicken, occasional burgers and steak, things that I grew up on. Wasn't until college years when I started getting a little more health conscious that I started to lean towards more plant based.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you had that kind of background to
Mhm.
draw from, and then kind of putting the two and two together, and the fact that your wife didn't seem to be getting better
Ever.
with the doctor's prescription of the
Yeah.
medication
Yeah.
and the diabetes diet
Yeah.
to follow. Okay. So then you do this research for a couple of years. You're diving
Mhm.
into the science and you're like, "Oh, there might be a different way." So
Mhm.
then did you and your wife kind of do this together then in changing how you ate, or how did that work in your kitchens
Yeah. Yeah. We
or
we
kitchens?
definitely we definitely did it together, and even going to, this is a good example of those health studies you talked about within Adventism, Seventh Day
Yeah.
Adventist Church, because you have different types of vegan or vegetarianism, right?
Yeah.
There are some who exclude all meat and dairy. There are those who include dairy and, maybe some fish, and there's those who just eat eggs. So, there's different varieties of plant based.
Yeah.
We had tried them all at this point.
Mm.
So low carb, keto. My wife was actually, when I finally got to the point where we did a overhaul following scientific evidence based, nutrition. Um, my wife was actually keto. She was on a keto diet, and it was the only thing that was keeping her blood sugars under control.
Mhm.
So, and you can imagine what a sacrifice that was for her, having been so plant based and trying to be vegan for so long.
Mhm.
Um, and it was frustrating for me because I'm like, I know this is not the way. I know your sugars are normal, but it's really causing a lot of damage in long term. Her liver enzymes are being elevated. Her cholesterol levels started to increase. So we knew that now she's at risk of heart disease, even though her sugars are under control. So when we made the switch, we made it together. And it made it a lot easier for sure. My heart goes out to those who are trying to change their diet, and there's a family member, especially a spouse, that's going against it. But when you can get a spouse on board, it makes a world of a difference for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I've definitely seen that in our community as well, and
Yeah,
there are a lot of people who do this alone, and there's a
it's
certain
tough.
kind of challenge that comes with that for sure, and I think people have to be really motivated to do this, and usually, I mean, in our community, we see a lot of times people who switch to this way of eating when they have a health concern that's scary
Yeah,
enough to make some big
that's what it
changes.
takes.
That's
That's what
kinda
it
what it
takes. Super.
takes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not until they're at the point of dialysis, or
Mhm.
their doctors telling them that now they have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and or it's not until they start to have signs like their visions is changing, and they
Yeah.
know that diabetes is the leading cause of blindness, limb amputations. So it's not until people get really sick that they get motivated enough to crowd out the noise and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this then. So you kind of change course. So now you're a coach. You help people reverse diabetes, which is amazing. And so, what do you know about diabetes now that you wish you would have known, like right when your wife was diagnosed, or even
Yeah.
before she was diagnosed?
So yeah, this is definitely a thing that I feel like I wish everyone knew. And I think it's absolutely crazy that we still don't know that the diabetes is not caused by sugar. Sugar is the symptom, is not the cause of diabetes. And so, what I really wish I had known, or what was what taught in medical school, was the fat connection, the connection
Okay.
between fat and insulin resistance. And so just understanding the science of how it works, how diabetes really works. I think when we educate the public, they can see that, the importance of limiting the amount of fat in our diet, especially saturated fat, which is mainly found in animal products, animal foods.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit? Can you dive into a little bit of that science?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I always like to talk about the fact that this is not something new. Like, oh yeah, this is what. Why are we just finding this out? But
Hmm.
this is actually as old as almost 100 years. So back in like late 1920s, there were actually experiments that showed the effect of fat on insulin resistance and blood sugar levels. So I think one of the oldest experiments was by Dr. Shirley Sweeney. He did a really neat experiment with a group of young men, putting them on several types of diets. And uh, one of those diets was a high fat diet. Another diet was a high protein diet. And a third group had a high carb diet. The high carb diet was interesting because they had the typical things you're not supposed to eat, like sugar, white flour, white bread, white rice, and they were to eat nothing but their given diets for 2 whole days. The high fat diet had the highest blood sugar levels at the end of the 2 days, actually double what the high carb diet had. These were non-diabetic individuals, but it shows you, and now we're talking like diabetes level. So going on a high fat diet
Hmm.
for 2 straight days um, caused them to essentially turn diabetic. Okay.
And this
We
was in
didn't
the 20s.
In the 20s, we understood this. So we know that there was a fat connection to why people
Yeah.
become, or how diabetes exacerbates and gets worse over time. Now, going fast forwarding to today, we kind of now know the science behind why that is. And there's a lot of studies since then, but we understand the science due to fancy tests like the MRI scans that could actually look at the muscle cell, right? And what happens when you infuse the blood with fat. When you infuse the blood with fat, it actually gets inside the cells, right, and actually blocks insulin from working. It's essentially disrupting the receptors at the surface of the cell, making insulin almost unrecognizable when it approaches the door. The simplest way I can describe this, or at least I've heard this described, is insulin is a key that unlocks the cell door to let sugar in. So sugar is like a vampire and needs an invitation to get inside your house, inside the cell, right? It can't
That's
go
a good
in
way to
without
put
an
it.
invitation, right? So sugar, we think it's a problem, but the real problem is who's keeping him outside, okay? And it's insulin's job to open the door and let sugar into the cell to do its thing. So because insulin is being resisted at the door, essentially it's like saying the lock mechanism on the door is gummed up. What's gumming up the lock? Fat. The fat that we eat and the fat that we wear causes insulin to no longer work at the door, and sugars get trapped outside the cell, raising our blood sugar levels. So it's not the sugar's fault. It's the insulin being resisted by a diet that's too high in fat, causing excess storage of fat in muscles, and also the liver is another place where a lot of fat ends up getting stored.
Okay, and that I mean, that makes sense, right? I
Yep.
mean, just like even somebody who's not a doctor or you that makes sense. You
Yeah.
need that key to open the door for the sugar to go in, and it's not necessarily a sugar problem, but it's a problem getting into the cell.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I guess we should preface we're talking type 2 diabetes specifically in this
I'm glad you
scenario.
said that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's obviously mechanisms that are similar in type 1 diabetics and type 2. Of course, with type 1 diabetics, it's easier to understand because their pancreas is not producing any insulin, right?
Mhm.
So the door is never opening, no matter what amount of carbohydrates you're eating, it gets blocked, stopped, right? But what can happen with type 1 diabetics is that if they're also having a diet that's high in fat, the insulin that they're injecting gets resisted. So
Mm-hmm.
they find, and this is why I find in my type 1 diabetics year after year, as they're eating high fat diets or they're failing to lose weight, the insulin that they're injecting isn't working, so they have to increase the dose. And the type 1 diabetics out there know what I'm talking about. You have to why do you always have to increase my insulin dose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so even sometimes when you maintain the carb, amount and keep a stable carb intake, you find over time that insulin resistance gets worse and worse, and the diabetes thus gets worse and worse with type. So with type 1 diabetics, same advice as with type 2 diabetics: lower the fat intake, ideally to 10 to 15% of your daily total calories. If you're trying to look for a gram amount, I would say 30 grams total daily fat intake. And what you'll find is that insulin starts to become sensitive again, both to the insulin that your pancreas produces in the case of type 2 diabetes, or the insulin that you're injecting in the case of type 1 diabetes. And so you need less insulin, which
Mm-hmm.
is best over time. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. So such good information, and so many studies have been done on this, and just as I'm sure with you, I mean, you saw it firsthand when your wife went through this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's when you see something like that, when nothing else had been working,
Yeah.
I mean, were you, even though you had like took a couple years to go into the science of this, were you still surprised that this worked at all, or were you like, okay, that tracks?
Only, I guess I wasn't surprised only because I finally understood the science of it. And I said, oh, of
Yeah.
course it makes sense, right?
Right.
It took, and it's amazing. I have clients that switch over to a plant-based diet, which by the way, if you're not on a plant-based diet and you switch over to a plant-based diet, you're eliminating a lot of fat just off the bat, just like
Yeah.
that, right? You're eliminating the main source of animal foods, especially in an American or Western diet. So, understanding the science, it just made sense that within weeks, and what was interesting though, and this is something I would also caution anybody who's trying this at home, you might find, especially if you've been on a low carb diet for a while, that for the first days or sometimes weeks, depending how long or how much fat you have had on your diet, also how obese you are or how overweight you are, you'll find that your sugars actually rise, right? And you think this is not working. Lewis
Mhm.
doesn't not know what he's talking about, because I've been on this diet for 3 whole days and my sugars are higher than they ever were. Things will get worse before they get better, right?
Mhm.
Because your body has to take time to heal. Your body's being overwhelmed because now on a plant-based diet, you're eating more carbs than your body's normally used to for how X amount of years. And so your body has to adjust. It takes some time to finally get to the point where the fat is now being burned, right? Because you're not feeding it. So the fat
Right.
that's in our muscles and our
Yeah.
liver and our excess fatty tissues, we could store fat anywhere. As you stop feeding your body fat, your body has to start turning over those fat cells.
Before
And
that lock can be like not gummed up anymore.
exactly, take
So
some time for
it needs to
the
clean it
gum
out.
to be cleaned out. And or
Right.
so it's the biggest thing was like the time, because my wife wants to quit. At some point, she was like, "No, no, this is not working, honey. I have
Mhm.
to go back to being, well, and my sugars are still in the 400 range,
Mhm.
But I said no. I believed in the science. I very much believe that if it makes sense, um, scientifically, then it's going to make sense to us physiologically, right? And so I said, it's going to take time. You just got to be patient. And it was actually took 6 weeks. The 6 week mark is probably longer than most it will take, because she had had diabetes so long.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so did her numbers start coming down a little bit during that 6-week time, or was it like kind of
Like
like
also
a
high
one
all
day it
the
was high and then one day it was low?
So that's a good question. I'm trying to remember, because we had this business for about 2 years now, so that was like 2 years ago. But
Mm.
I can remember that I would, at least for the first 2 weeks, there was almost no change, and I was like, oh no, is this gonna work?
Uh-huh.
Um, Within 3 weeks, we started seeing a few more dips, right, than normal, like
Okay.
as far as getting closer to normal. And then it started gradually getting better, but once in a while, she still have an occasional spike, right, that came out of nowhere. So, but even the spikes stopped over time. So it became more gradual and then normal,
Okay.
staying
Yeah.
normal. Yeah.
I was just talking with somebody on the podcast last week, and she had actually changed to she was eating mainly a vegetarian diet, but
Mhm.
like, dairy and eggs and stuff like that. She changed to, and she really wanted to get her cholesterol down because her cholesterol was really, really high.
Yeah.
And so she switched to a whole food plant-based diet. And the next blood test she had, her cholesterol had gone up a little bit. And her doctor's
Mhm.
like, no, you need to like stop doing that. We need to get you on medication. And she was like, no, let me just do it a little while longer. And then
Yeah.
sure enough, the next test, her cholesterol was in the normal range. And so I've heard
Mhm.
that too with even like cholesterol. Like you might get a little bit of a bump even
Bump.
if you
Yeah.
switch, because your body, like you said, has to have time to heal and to clear it out.
Clear it out. And you have to think about this too, logically, like where is the fat going? So whenever you're just changing, especially if you change it to a whole food plant-based diet, the healthiest diet there is, there's going to be a little bit of weight loss. And when your body is burning fat, or fat cells are basically being turned over, that fats, the fatty acids breakdown goes into your blood, spills over into the blood, right? So the cholesterol that you're checking may be the turnover of fat that's being spilled over from fatty tissues that are turned over. So there could be a rise, but it's temporary. But
Mhm.
yeah, it just takes patience. I think we're so used to instant results. We're so used to a pill for every ill. If it's going to work, it's going to work now. We didn't get diabetes overnight. You didn't get high cholesterol overnight. Your blood pressure didn't rise overnight. So it's going to take some time to go back to normal. I do have to say this though, Molly. I think we got to speak to those of us who are diabetic and plant based. So I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm plant based and I'm still diabetic. It's not working.
Mhm.
So I definitely want to advise anyone listening that who is plant based, if you're struggling, remember to track your fat intake, because even in a plant based diet, you can have a diet that's high in fat, especially if you're eating, processed foods or plant butters, even olive oil, healthy extra virgin olive oil or seed oils. Those can really mark up your fat intake and make it hard to, as we said, ungum up the lock. So
Mhm.
measure your fat intake if you're a plant-based already and you're still diabetic, and try to keep it to 10 to 15% of your total calories.
Okay, yeah, and that's a great reminder. And we kind of talked, like, hit on that just briefly before, but I think the term plant-based now is sort of like can be kind of like a blanket term. And so when we're talking, like for the recipes and the meal plans and everything that we are about, like Clean Food Dirty Girl is like specifically whole food plant-based. So it's there's no processed food, including oil. But even if you're doing that, you can still eat a diet really high in fat if you're eating like a lot of olives and a lot of nut butters and a lot of nuts. I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction to get away from the
Yeah,
processed food, but it's still, important to be mindful,
be
like you
mindful.
said.
Yeah,
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 and
because
counting the fat.
so don't discount plant fats is essentially what you have to remember.
Yeah.
That even those have to be watched specifically for those who are suffering from insulin resistance
Mhm.
conditions. So diabetes isn't only insulin resistant condition. Whether you're talking anything within the realm of metabolic syndrome, I'd encourage trying a low fat diet.
Yeah. Hey there, you beautiful human. If you are tired of stressing about what to eat, feeling stuck in a food rut, or spending hours searching for healthy plant based recipes that actually taste amazing, listen up. At Clean Food Dirty Girl, we have got you covered with our Meal Plan Club. Every week, you get a full plan packed with insanely delicious plant based recipes. Think saucy bowls, hearty soups, vibrant salads, and of course, plenty of tacos, all made from whole plant foods. Not only that, but we give you a shopping list, a prep list, and step by step instructions so you know exactly what to do. No guesswork, no overwhelm. When you sign up, you'll have access to over 450 plans, and we add new ones all the time. So, whether you're new to plant based eating or you've been doing this for years, our meal plans will help you save time, save money, eat better, and feel amazing without having to figure it all out by yourself. So, if you're ready to upgrade your meals, head over to cleanfooddirtygirl.com, click on the top of the page where it says join, and choose Meal Plan Club. You can read all about it and sign up there. Okay, I hope to see you in the club. Your taste buds and your future self will thank you. Oh, and one more thing, perfection is not required. Yeah, Lewis, like it's just crazy to me to think of how many people just in the world, in this country, suffer with diabetes and the complications of diabetes, because that
Yeah,
can really be devastating,
devastating. Yeah.
including losing your vision and having to go through amputations. Like it's such a devastating disease, and so many people. Do you have the stats right now with just how many people in the US are type like 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic?
Yeah, so what the most alarming statistic for me is that 1 in 4 people have diabetes and don't even know it. You
Wow.
know, that like or for some form of diabetes, whether it be pre-diabetes or full diabetes. So you look at 4 people in a room and one of us have diabetes. You know what I'm saying? We're at that point where it's going to get worse in the next 10 years. Worse
Yeah.
than 1 in 4. So
Yeah.
there's nobody who doesn't know somebody who has diabetes, but it's worse than that because you may have diabetes and not even know it. Because
Mhm.
how often are we getting our blood sugars tested? Or even worse, Molly, is that when we do get our blood sugar tested, how many of our doctors are checking our insulin levels to see if we have insulin resistance? So that's the underlying layer. That's the root cause of diabetes. Your blood
Mhm.
sugar could be normal, your A1C could be perfect, but your insulin may be overproductive. Your pancreas is overproductive because your insulin is being churned out because of the diet you're eating. And within years, now all of a sudden you're pre-diabetic. No, you've been on this verge of pre-diabetes for the last 8, 10 years. You just didn't know because your doctor never
Mhm.
checked your insulin level.
That's a really good point, because like when I go to I get labs once a year, and like my A1C is checked, but like I how do we even ask for an insulin resistant test, or like I want to check my insulin resistance? Like is that a common test?
It's becoming common now, actually, surprisingly so. I'm seeing it more. Doctors order it. Um, and endocrinologists are usually going to be the ones to order it, know about it. But if your doctor doesn't know about it, I'd be surprised. But if there's a doctor that doesn't know
Mhm.
about it, just if you ask them, it's not expensive to tack it on to your annual lab work. Say, hey, I want to know what my insulin levels are, and they can order that along with your routine labs without a problem. Yeah.
Oh, it's a good tip there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey there, you beautiful human. If you are tired of stressing about what to eat, feeling stuck in a food rut, or spending hours searching for healthy plant based recipes that actually taste amazing, listen up. At Clean Food Dirty Girl, we have got you covered with our Meal Plan Club. Every week, you get a full plan packed with insanely delicious plant based recipes. Think saucy bowls, hearty soups, vibrant salads, and of course, plenty of tacos, all made from whole plant foods. Not only that, but we give you a shopping list, a prep list, and step by step instructions so you know exactly what to do. No guesswork, no overwhelm. When you sign up, you'll have access to over 450 plans, and we add new ones all the time. So, whether you're new to plant based eating or you've been doing this for years, our meal plans will help you save time, save money, eat better, and feel amazing without having to figure it all out by yourself. So, if you're ready to upgrade your meals, head over to cleanfooddirtygirl.com, click on the top of the page where it says join, and choose Meal Plan Club. You can read all about it and sign up there. Okay, I hope to see you in the club. Your taste buds and your future self will thank you. Oh, and one more thing, perfection is not required. So 1 in 4, that's a crazy statistic. And
Yeah.
now, we have the science, and also you've seen the people who you work with heal
Hmm.
from diabetes. So you
Yeah.
started doing this and you're like, wow, I want to like help people with this, because this is like a
Yeah.
real thing that people should know. And so
Yeah.
you started this business and this coaching to help people through it. I want to talk
Yeah.
about some of what you've seen with that from in our community. We see it too. People who are like, oh, I'm no longer technically considered diabetic, like I don't have any symptoms of diabetes, I guess is what
Yeah.
they say,
Yeah.
right? And wow, it's the food, like it's crazy,
Yeah.
because it's, even though that is quite a big change for some people, it's not as drastic as being on medication your whole life, or like a lot of other things out there.
Agreed.
So what have you seen with your clients who you work with then?
I would say the first thing that's surprising is how many people who tell me from the first consultation that I will never be plant based. Like I will never do
Mm.
that. And that's just give it a try. What do you have to lose, right? And the transformation that comes 90 days, because it's a 90 program, but way before the 90 days, when they've finally fully embraced the changes, they're like, they never want to go back.
Yeah.
They're so surprised by the amount of food choices they have, right? And we're talking, and I'm in North Carolina at the moment, so we're talking about,
Oh,
some good country cooking, Southern. They love their fat back, and they're not going to let go of their meat for nothing. And they give it a try. Give it a try. Unfortunately, so the patients that do come to me, they are at the point of desperation, where
yeah.
people who are generally healthy, or think they are healthy at least, aren't really ready to make that change. But
Yeah.
most of the patients that come to me, like a patient I just coached recently, who is actually on the verge of dialysis. Her doctor said within the next 3 months, you're going to be starting dialysis, right? Your kidney function is low enough, or close to the level where we're going to start you on dialysis. And explain to her that there's really nothing that she can do. Um,
Mm.
so she had actually rejected a consultation with me because she was not ready to change her diet. So I had a consultation. I can't remember what at what point she calls me back and says, you know what, my doctor just scared the shit out of me. Sorry.
Mhm. No, no,
I
that's
do not,
okay here.
I I
You're
do
good.
not want to start dialysis. And so I said, okay, are you ready? Are you willing to work together now? Let's do this. And so 3 months later, she went back to the nephrologist, and they went to do lab work, and sat her down and says, your kidney function went up. Like, what did you do? And they called in another doctor because they had never seen someone's, because kidney function, as we get older, it declines, right? And when you're in kidney failure, right, when you're in late stage kidney disease, your kidney plummets even further, faster, right, until the point where you need a machine to do the work of the kidney. Instead of plummeting, it started rising, and they had never seen it before. And when she told it to change what she did, they didn't believe her. They said, "Oh well." They even seemed a little, she told, in her words, I don't know, they seem almost frustrated that they lost a customer.
Oh,
you know,
oh, that's so sad. Yes, that's so sad. And
you know,
I've heard a lot of like that's incredible. So how is she doing now?
yeah, she's loving the diet.
Okay.
Those are the biggest proponents, the ones who are almost like, I would never change my diet, and now, like,
Yeah.
man, showing off their latest whole food plant-based meal. So
It's got to be
loving
really
it.
satisfying to see that and really
Yeah.
making such a huge change in people's lives. I mean, it's really life changing. And but I think that you're right. I mean, so many people have this knee jerk sort of like, oh, I could never, even if they're in pretty bad shape, like, oh,
Mhm.
I could never. But it's like once, I see it all the time. Once they start and they see how good the food can be and how good they feel and how like their body is healing, it's like, oh wow, why would I ever go back?
So
Why would I
back,
ever?
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
What's to say, you never know how sick you are until you get healthy, right?
Yeah.
And there's another saying I love: nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. You know?
Yeah. So, oh, it's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
super good. And there's a lot of people I've heard too who like the doctors will run these tests, whatever they are, and so, there's some numbers that improve or some functions that improve, and it's like the first thing is thinking that it's something wrong with the test and need to like retest. And we've heard about this in like a lot of different scenarios. Even like I talked to a woman who's had like glaucoma in her eye and
Mhm.
her eyes improved. Like her glaucoma got
Yeah.
better and her doctors were
Yeah.
like, "Wait, this doesn't
No, this doesn't
happen."
happen.
And she's like, "It happened. It's happening."
Yeah.
And I'm always like, send them to, tell them it's whole food plant-based, tell them, like
It's a
yeah,
shame, but
it's
yeah,
amazing.
we don't know. And there's been studies that show that, our physicians, when it comes to nutrition, the common person on the street knows more.
Right.
But yeah, it reminds me of, another patient of mine that told me that when he went back to his doctor saw, oh, the medications are working because your blood sugars are normal finally. Once he's back to normal, right? So his A1C dropped significantly, back to normal range. And so he's assuming the medicine did. He said, no, doctor, I haven't used those medicines in months.
Oh,
And so he said, how's that possible? He says, I guess we must have made a mistake. Maybe you were never diabetic.
ah.
Like, no, that's not it. Like, and so, and it's funny because then at that point, the doctor's like, why do I need to keep on checking? He wanted his A1C to continue to be monitored. And then he had to convince the doctor to keep checking it because he says, well, you're not diabetic now. So there's no point in you
Right.
keeping an eye on it. But it is sad, the ignorance in the medical field when it comes to nutrition. And especially since the vast majority of the things we treat are diet related. You would think that one of the first things we would learn is a healthy diet. And it's the
Yeah.
last thing we learn. If anything, we probably get a few hours of that along in 2-3 years of PA school, or of course 7 to 10 in medical school.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
incredible, really. And yeah, and that's why it has to start from the ground up. It's like now patients are telling their doctors, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I think more and more people are doing it,
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like, even I've had people even who, it's like they've gone through this change, and maybe they were pre-diabetic and they're not anymore. Maybe they've been able to lose some weight and get their cholesterol down, and yet in the back of their mind, like, they're still really afraid of carbs. Like, that the fear of carbs is so prevalent and
Psychological.
just like so packed into our psyche. Can you just talk a little bit about carbs? Because I know that even
Yeah.
people watching this, like, okay, I get it, but carbs are bad, right?
Carbs are still bad, right? Yeah.
Carbs are so bad. So,
That's the first thing you hear.
yeah, carbs are bad.
That's the big one. Because even after watching a presentation like this or listening to it, they're still going to go and hear maybe 24 commercials within the next month that remind them that carbs are bad, when or going to on social media, or ads on, everywhere you go, it seems there's this message that if you want to get healthy, then get rid of carbs.
Yeah, it's saturated. It's saturated. Yeah.
Saturated. So that's why it's so hard, because for every one voice saying it's not the carbs, there's 9 more saying it is. So one thing I always remind people is that try to look at the source of information. Where is this information coming from, right? So if every health institution, there's not any major health institution that does not agree that what the main problem when it comes to insulin resistance and diabetes is fat, saturated fat. So this is something I encourage people to understand this. It's not a fad.
A fad,
Not a
right.
fad, okay?
Yes.
So so this whole idea of low fat is not a fad. This is science.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the whole idea of low carb, it is a fad. It is a fad that helps sell meat, dairy, and eggs. That's what it comes down to. Okay, that's my opinion. All right, that's my humble opinion.
I agree with you.
Fads are not going to go anywhere with fad. There's always going to be fads out there. Fads don't need to be based on science. But whenever there is a fad, there's usually a reason for it. Something that's being sold. If you ask yourself, what's makes more money, fruits and vegetables or meat and dairy?
Mm-hmm.
The meat and dairy industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's a lot of influence in convincing the public that they need to eat more of it, not less of it. And so when you look at fitness circles, health gurus, they're all caught up in this fad that unfortunately it's almost like a puppet master, the puppet master being the food industry, that benefits from this falsified information. And those of us who are caught up in it, willingly or unknowingly continuing the same dialogue, that carbs are the problem.
Yeah.
And so that being said, though, Molly, obviously, does that mean I can go down Coca-Cola? Yeah, sugar is good for you. Sugar's back in, and no. And that's why I love the term whole food plant-based, right? So we're not eating refined, highly processed carbs either. So one thing I would say, just to give you an idea on this. So sugar is a problem. So if you overeat calories of anything, you're going to gain weight, right? If you overeat calories, then you need more. So sugar, for example, if you overeat calories and sugar, you could actually cause the fat in your liver to go up by 30%. That's what studies show. So overeating a certain amount of calories will cause your fat in your liver to go up by 30%. That's significant. Mm-hmm. But this is to go back to showing why fat is worse. If you take the same amount of calories and overeat calories in fat instead of sugar, liver fat goes up by 50%. Actually, a little over 50%. So while, yes, processed sugar is fattening, the surprise, fat is actually more fattening. It always will be. So so watch your intake of sugars. Of course, processed sugars are fattening, but we can't ignore the amount of fat, specifically saturated fat, in our diet. I mean, just think about it. There's not, for every gram of carbohydrate or protein, there's 4 calories. But for every gram of fat, there are 9 calories.
Hmm.
So why are we still thinking that carbs is more fattening than fat is? I don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah, it's really like obviously
Yeah.
not the
It's
case. Yeah,
100%. I don't know.
when you look at the numbers actually and you look at like yeah, that's a really good reminder. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I love what you said. Like when we're talking about carbs, like there are complex carbohydrates, like the
Yeah.
ones you find in veggies and beans and even blueberries, right? And then there's the simple carbohydrates, which aren't doing your body any good, but there are, the different kind of carbs and there's different kinds of fats as well, right? I think that you really hit it. Like I think that it takes at the end of the day people just to be mindful
iPhone,
of
yeah.
what they're putting in their mouth
Hmm.
and just it when you zoom out, like when you get away from all of the influencers and all of the ads and all of the stuff on social media, eating a diet filled with whole plant foods that just haven't been messed with too much, like it makes sense,
Yes.
right? That the
Yes.
body would respond
Respond.
well
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. So a best actually visual example I like to use is like it's using currency. Everyone understands money. So if I were to tell you that you had to, you were only allowed to hold a certain weight of money, not dollar amount, but weight of money, um, in your pocket, right, at a certain day, would you want to fill your pocket with coins or dollars?
Mhm. Dollars,
Dollars, right?
obviously.
Because
Yeah.
dollars hold more
Mhm.
more value while being lighter, right? The dollars are your complex carbs. That's your steel cut oats, um, versus the coins being your refined carbs like quick oats or box cereals, right? The coins are heavier in the sense that they're going to fill up your calories quicker, right? They're highly refined. The fiber's out of there. They're compacted, so the calories are densely in there. They're going to weigh you down, causing weight gain and blood sugar spikes. So your refined carbs are the coins that hold little nutritional value, compared to the dollar, which is a complex carb. So thinking about money, people understand. Okay, I want to fill up your body with dollars, not coins, right? Eat complex carbs that are rich in nutrients and fiber and phytochemicals that add value to your overall health, right? While keeping you light, right? Because they are not rich in calories, like coins, the refined carbs are. So
That's a
that's
great
I think a
analogy.
good way to explain, a good carb versus bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like it. That's accessible to people
Yeah.
for sure. So, let's talk about this then. So what would you recommend then if somebody is listening to this and it's like the first time they're hearing about this? I'm sure that people would be really excited like, "Hey, I wanna try this. Like, I wanna try to see if this works for me." Just give us, an idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What do you have
Okay.
your clients and your patients eat? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just a
Yeah.
little example.
Sure. So breakfast, there's a whole lot of options. Well, I like to rethink breakfast. People typically think of, eggs and some kind of, meat or maybe um, a sausage. So a lot of fatty foods are in breakfast. But I actually want to flip the script and make sure that we're eating a lot of whole complex carbs like oatmeal. Um, Blueberries are great to add to a breakfast like oatmeal because blueberries also make it easier for your carbs to be digested. They're called starch blockers. So
Mhm.
blueberry oatmeal is great. If you're really into eggs for breakfast, then you can instead of eggs, maybe rethinking a lower fat option like tofu. Scrambled tofu can do really well when you season it. I've made scrambled tofu and it tastes just like eggs.
Mhm.
So scrambled tofu with some sweet potatoes is a great breakfast option. So lunch and dinner can really be interchangeable because what's nice about this diet is that you're no longer worried about carbs anymore. So you're not carb counting; it's not necessary.
Mhm.
So if you want to eat a bean-based burrito for lunch, just nice and quick. I think a lot of people need a quick meal. So bean burritos, salads are good, obviously, because they could be quick and easy. So soups are good, for a night, something to eat at night. Uh, Now this is my Haitian background. I love rice and beans. So
Mhm.
brown rice and beans maybe some sweet potato or plantain. I love quinoa. I love stir fry. So stir fry is something nice you could do real quick on the stove at night. Um, yeah, and then a fruit bowl. You can eat that
Hmm.
again, breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Hmm.
So it's hard to say what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, and what's for dinner because you can interchange it all because you're no longer worried about carbs anymore. So you can, and once, and the key, Molly, is once you've addressed the root cause, right, which we've gotten the gum out of the lock. Now the carbohydrates that you're eating, complex carbs, can go inside the cell all day long.
Hmm. Yeah, wonderful. And so many options, right?
Yeah,
There's so
yeah.
many different types of whole plant foods out there that,
Too many options.
I
Too many
mean,
options.
yeah. And really, I mean, I
Yeah,
hear people say all the time, like, oh, you don't, you eat plant-based. Like, what do you eat? I'm like, no, no. Like, I eat way more
yeah.
variety of things
I,
now than I ever did.
so much things I've discovered. I don't know, Molly, if you like mushrooms, but like discovering the
Love
world of
mushrooms.
mushrooms. So
Hmm.
like if you're into chicken, really craving chicken, then get some oyster mushrooms and season it just like you would chicken. So
Hmm.
oyster mushrooms have a nice texture profile similar to chicken. If you want a nice steak, get a portobello mushroom or those are really nice to sear on and season like steak. I'm trying to think of shiitake is great.
Have you ever tried lion's mane mushrooms?
Lion's mane, that's another one that tastes like steak.
It's
I've had
meaty.
people slice it and think they're eating
Yeah.
steak. So if you
Yeah.
guys don't have are just turning your nose and saying, I would never eat mushrooms, you just haven't seasoned it right.
Yeah, or
But
try different ones, really, because even
yeah, try
like
different ones.
portobellas, I mean,
Yeah,
really, you could make it like kind of smoky a little bit, like
yeah.
it's, and yeah, so many amazing types of mushrooms, so many amazing
Awesome.
types of
Asian
beans.
markets are a great place to
Hmm.
find. If you can't find any of your local farmers market, try an Asian market. They usually have a good variety of mushrooms there. But yeah, try different varieties of mushrooms if you're looking for a meaty texture. Jackfruit is another thing that's a lot of people aren't familiar with using.
Hmm.
Barbecued flavored jackfruit. Throw some barbecue sauce in there. Tastes and real good on some whole wheat bread, and you think you're eating a nice barbecue chicken sandwich. So
Yes.
my advice is season up your vegetables like you would your meat. Don't disrespect the vegetables, man. They like seasonings. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think, yeah, it's, I don't know, and it's just so worth it. It's just because
mhm,
also the other thing is like, and I'm sure that you see this with your clients and your patients, like the same diet that's really good for diabetes is the same diet that's really good for heart disease, and it's the
yes,
same diet that's really good for having a really healthy balanced gut,
yes.
and is also anti-inflammatory. And so it's like it has like a domino effect, but in
I
like
love it.
an awesome way, right?
I love it. It's fun. And I didn't know my blood pressure and my cholesterol and my weight and all these other things are becoming normal. I just wanted to talk to you about diabetes, and
Yeah.
you just scared me of everything. There's no greater feeling. Like that's why I still work as a physician assistant, but like I'll never stop health coaching because it allows me the time to not just educate. That's why I said I'm not just an educator, but to really motivate people and
Yeah.
to inspire them and to hold their hand along the way during the hard times so that they could turn knowing into doing. And yeah, people just need that help.
Yeah, you're right, because there's a lot of information out there, and there's one thing to learn about it and to, have a grasp on, okay, well, I get this intellectually, and then there's that other step of, okay, putting it into action. And the learning part can be really interesting, and then the doing part can be really daunting. So I
Uh,
think,
yeah.
having somebody to guide you through it and to kind of hold your hand through it, I
Mhm.
think is so valuable.
It's nice.
Do you have clients outside of, North Carolina? Can you do,
Actually,
like, clients who are from all over, or do you have to have clients from North Carolina with your coaching practice?
so that's what the beauty of the virtual world, number one, and health coaching in
Yeah,
general. So health coaching, there's no limitation. So as you may know, like someone who is not even a licensed health professional can be a health coach.
right.
Um, we are not replacing your doctors.
Mhm.
So even though I am certified to be a physician, I am not serving as your physician. I'm serving as your coach.
Yeah,
So I can work with anybody around the world. So I've had patients overseas even.
cool.
So as long as you have Wi-Fi, yeah, we can meet up. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely put your information in the show notes so that if people wanna jump on a call with you and connect with you,
Awesome.
they can do that. And then what is your, website? Just so people
It's
can
just
hear it?
my first and last name. So you can find me under lewisbertus.com.
Okay.
And that's how you'll find my website. Or if you're looking for me on social media platforms, you could also search Diabetes 180
Okay.
with my name. You'll be able to find me.
Okay, awesome. Really good. And, thanks for the work that you're doing because, I mean, as we kind of talked about, we're so saturated with the messages that are exactly opposite of the messages that we are,
It makes
working
me pull my
to
hair out.
to put out, right? And so, thank you for being a voice and for,
Always.
bringing this good message and this good work into the world because we need it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff working against that and,
Mhm.
and it's like a ripple effect, I mean,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of people in our community who have underwent like so many health transformations and then it's like, oh, their cousin noticed or their sister noticed or their mom noticed and started paying attention. And so it has this ripple effect that goes
Um,
out. And that's a beautiful thing as well. So like every one person you help, you're helping,
I
it's the
love that.
potential to help a lot more
Yeah.
people. So
Well said. I mean,
yeah.
I thank God for the opportunity. That's all I could say. It's like it's a humbling experience and to be part of something so big.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. I really enjoyed talking with you, Lewis.
All right. Thank you for having me.
You got it. Thank you for listening to this podcast and for being in our sphere. If you can rate and review this podcast wherever you listen to them, that would be badass. Thank you so much for spreading the dirty love.